Welcome back to Jonathan Blake. If you're new here, this is where we break down the most critical global events happening right now. No fluff, no spin, just the truth told straight. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an update, because what I'm about to walk you through today is one of the most significant military developments the world has seen in decades. Let's get into it. The United States has just unleashed its heaviest firepower of the entire war. In a devastating new wave of attacks, American B-2 stealth bombers are dropping 30,000-pound bunker busters directly onto Iran's most top-secret nuclear and missile factories. And the destruction is so catastrophic, so total, that Iran is now secretly begging Vladimir Putin to help them negotiate a ceasefire, a surrender. That is the word we need to be using here, surrender. Now, before we get into the full picture, I want you to think about something. Just a few weeks ago, Iran was projecting strength. They were firing ballistic missiles, sending drones across borders, threatening to close one of the most critical waterways in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. Fast forward to today, and their president is quietly making phone calls to Moscow, hoping that Russia can talk the Americans into backing off. How did we get here this fast? Let's break it down. It starts with a statement from Admiral Brad Cooper, the person heading the U.S. Central Command. What he said is worth really sitting with. He confirmed that since the very first 24 hours of this campaign, Iranian ballistic missile and drone attacks have dropped drastically. Not gradually, drastically. That is not a small detail. That means whatever the United States military unleashed at the start of this operation worked immediately and worked at a scale Iran could not recover from. But Admiral Cooper made something else very clear. While American forces were defending against Iranian threats, they were simultaneously doing something far more consequential. They were methodically dismantling Iran's entire war-making capacity. And that word, methodically, is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. This was not chaotic bombing. This was not punishing strikes meant to send a message. This was a surgical, calculated, deliberate campaign designed to permanently destroy Iran's ability to wage war, not just now, but ever again. Cooper confirmed that just the night before his statement, American bomber forces struck a large ballistic missile manufacturing facility. One factory, one night. But it was not just one night, and it was not just one factory. This was a rolling, continuous campaign targeting the entire industrial backbone of Iran's military machine. Now let's talk about where exactly these strikes are landing, because the geography matters. One of the confirmed locations is the Telangana nuclear site in Parchin. This area is significant because it does not just house nuclear infrastructure. It is home to multiple Iranian military and missile production facilities, all concentrated in the same region. And the American GBU-57 bunker busters have been put to work there in a very serious way. For those who don't know, the GBU-57 is the 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrator, the largest non-nuclear bomb in the American arsenal. It was specifically designed to do one thing: destroy deeply buried, heavily fortified underground facilities. The kind that normal bombs cannot touch. The kind that nations like Iran have spent decades and billions of dollars building precisely because they believed nothing could ever reach them. And here's what makes this moment historically significant. These are the same bunker busters, the same GBU-57 bombs that were used during Operation Midnight Hammer. Back then, they destroyed Iranian nuclear sites. Now they are being used again to destroy the newer nuclear sites that Iran built after the first ones were taken out. Iran thought they had learned their lesson. They thought they had built deeper, stronger, smarter. And the United States military answered that challenge directly. But nuclear sites are not the only target. The military complex in Parchin has also taken massive damage, multiple buildings destroyed or heavily damaged. And what strikes analysts most about this campaign is the precision. There is no munition being wasted. The strikes go directly to the structures that matter: buildings housing weapon systems, manufacturing lines, and command infrastructure. Nothing wasted on roads, nothing wasted on open ground. Pure, targeted, deliberate destruction. Now I want to stop here for a second because I genuinely want to know what you think. Here's the first question I'm putting to you. Did you expect this level of precision and speed from the U.S. military in this campaign, or does this genuinely surprise you? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and this kind of conversation is exactly what makes this community worth building. Now let's talk about something that gives you a real sense of how far ahead the American military is operating. There is a moment from this campaign that military observers have described as genuinely disrespectful, and I mean that in the most literal tactical sense. American forces destroyed an Iranian Su-22 tactical bomber while it was sheltered inside a hardened aircraft structure, a reinforced structure specifically built to protect it from aerial attack. But the strike didn't go through the roof the way most militaries would have done it. The munition went through the opening, a gap in the front of the structure, and made direct contact with the aircraft, even though the full bomber was not directly visible from outside. The military had the easier option: blow through the roof, destroy the plane, done. Instead, they chose the harder shot, the more precise shot, and the message being sent by that choice is unmistakable. This is not just about destroying hardware. This is about demonstrating a level of capability that makes every adversary watching rethink everything they believed about modern warfare. Iran spent years and enormous resources hardening its military assets, and in that single moment, the United States demonstrated that hardening means nothing when the other side's precision is absolute. Now, beyond the stockpiles, beyond the existing weapons and aircraft, what the United States is really targeting is Iran's future, because you can replace missiles if you still have the factories. You can rebuild a drone fleet if you still have the manufacturing lines. But if those factories are gone, if every production facility is rubble, there is nothing to rebuild from. The well runs dry permanently. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth addressed this directly in a press conference. He stated that very soon, all of Iran's defense companies will be destroyed, and he made it concrete. As of just 2 days before he spoke, Iran's entire ballistic missile production capacity had been functionally defeated and destroyed. Every company, every component builder, buildings, complexes, factory lines across Iran, gone. The United States is not just shooting down the missiles Iran currently has, it is ensuring that Iran can never make more. Full stop. That is a fundamentally different kind of military campaign than the world is used to seeing. Most operations aim to degrade an adversary's capability. This one is aiming to eliminate it permanently. There is a difference between breaking someone's arm and removing it entirely. What is happening in Iran right now is the latter. Now, amid all of this destruction, let's talk about the Iranian government's response, because it tells you everything about where they actually stand. The Iranian president has put out public demands for a ceasefire. But let me be precise about who this person is and what authority he actually holds. This is the same president who just recently publicly apologized for Iranian military actions against Gulf countries. Hours after that apology, not days, hours, the Iranian military contradicted him publicly and told the world the president does not know what he is talking about, that Iran is not apologetic to anyone. And the president had to walk back his own statement. So this is a man with zero real power in his own country. And now this same figure is publicly demanding Iran's legitimate rights be recognized, reparations be paid, and guarantees given against future aggression before any ceasefire is considered. On the surface, those sound like demands from a country that believes it still has leverage. But Iran doesn't even have control over its own skies right now. Which brings us to the most significant development in this entire story, the gap between what Iran is saying publicly and what it is actually doing behind closed doors. Here is what we now know. Iran is not just asking for a ceasefire through presidential statements. According to information confirmed by Russia, Iran is willing to transfer 400 kilograms of enriched uranium into Russian custody. Let that land. The same Iran that publicly and repeatedly refused to give up its enriched uranium during every round of pre-war negotiations. That same Iran is now offering to hand it over through a back channel, with Russia as the broker. This is not a minor concession. This is a country signaling that it understands the position it is in. There is also historical precedent. In 2015, Russia played a similar role when it accepted Iranian enriched uranium as part of the nuclear deal signed at that time. The mechanism exists, the framework is understood, and Iran's own president confirmed that he spoke directly with Putin recently. It appears that around that same conversation, Putin reached out to President Trump and raised the question of ceasefire prospects. Russia was acting as the intermediary, carrying what amounts to an Iranian surrender offer to the American side, and yet the United States rejected it. Here is why that rejection is the right call. Iran said it is willing to give up the uranium it currently holds, but it is not willing to give up the enrichment infrastructure, the centrifuges, the facilities that allow it to produce more in the future. That is the exact same problem that existed before the first shot was fired, because Iran has already proven it is willing to enrich uranium far beyond what civilian nuclear energy requires. Normal nuclear power programs do not need 60% enriched uranium. That level serves one purpose: missiles as a direct stepping stone toward weapons-grade material. Weapons-grade uranium requires enrichment of around 90%. At 60%, you are not pursuing energy. You are building the runway toward a bomb. So when Iran says trust us, we just want to keep the centrifuges, the world has to look at the track record, and the track record says otherwise. Iran has already crossed every line that peaceful nuclear programs do not cross. All you need to reach weapons territory is to spin those same centrifuges faster and longer. No credible security framework can allow that capability to remain intact in a nation with Iran's history. The United States rejecting this partial offer was the only defensible position. Here is the second question I want to put to you. Think carefully before you answer. If Iran was willing to give up everything, not just its current uranium stockpile, but the actual physical infrastructure to produce more, the centrifuges, all the enrichment facilities, do you think that would be enough to end this war? Or has this conflict crossed too many thresholds to be settled by a nuclear deal alone? Leave your answer in the comments. I genuinely don't think this has an obvious answer, and I want to know where you land on it. Now, while negotiations play out behind the scenes, something is happening very publicly that deserves focused attention: the formation of an international coalition to protect the Strait of Hormuz. This is a waterway through which somewhere between 20 and 30% of the world's oil supply passes every single day. For decades, Iran wielded the threat of closing it as its most powerful geopolitical card, the ability to hold global energy markets hostage through one narrow choke point. President Trump publicly announced that many countries affected by Iran's attempted closure are sending warships in conjunction with the United States to keep it open. And he made something important clear. Even though the United States has already destroyed 100% of Iran's conventional military capabilities, a residual threat to the strait remains. It does not take a functioning military to drop a naval mine into a shipping lane or fire a single close-range missile at a passing vessel. These are low-technology threats that a defeated force can still execute with minimal resources, and the disruption they cause to global markets can be wildly disproportionate to the size of the attack. Trump specifically called on China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom to send warships. But he did not confirm which countries are actually committing. France has expressed willingness through ministerial statements, but has not yet formally committed. The United Kingdom has acknowledged the request and said it is determining how it can help. These are not the statements of countries rushing to join. They are countries navigating real political and diplomatic complexity. France has its own relationships across the Middle East to protect. The United Kingdom has its own domestic political pressures to manage. But the bottom line for global energy security is whether the strait stays open. And based on everything Trump has said, the United States is not leaving that question to anyone else. And through all of this, the military campaign inside Iran has not paused for a single moment. One of the most significant confirmed recent strikes is the complete destruction of a Revolutionary Guard headquarters, an IRGC command facility in the Rabat Karim area near Tehran. This was not a weapons depot. This was command and control infrastructure for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the most powerful military organization inside Iran and the real institutional backbone of the regime. The IRGC is not just a military force, it is a political enforcer and an economic empire. It is the mechanism by which the government has maintained control for over 40 years. Destroying IRGC headquarters is not just about taking out a building. It is about severing the organization's ability to coordinate, communicate, and issue orders in real time. It forces units to operate without direction. It accelerates the collapse of the command hierarchy at the exact moment that hierarchy needs to be most functional. And then there is something President Trump said publicly that cuts through all the military and diplomatic complexity and gets to something deeply human. He spoke explicitly about the IRGC elements personally involved in the massacre of protesters, because this part of the story often gets lost in the broader coverage, and it should not. Prior to this war, the Revolutionary Guard went into the streets of Iranian cities and opened fire on Iranian civilians, people who were protesting, people who were standing on the street, and 32,000 of them were killed. Trump stated on the record that the United States has extensive documentation of the individuals involved, video evidence, names, faces. He described them as thugs, said that when they are caught, they will be tried and executed, and called on them to surrender their weapons because the window to do so is closing. And beyond the moral dimension, think about what this means inside Iran. For decades, the Revolutionary Guard maintained power through fear. Ordinary Iranians knew stepping out of line could bring the guard down on them. That fear was the regime's most durable tool. Now the Guard itself is watching its commanders get killed, its headquarters get destroyed, and its individual members identified by name on American surveillance footage. The dynamic has reversed completely. The enforcer is now the one living in fear, and that psychological collapse may end up being more consequential for the future of Iran than any single military strike. We are potentially watching the complete dismantling in real time of the structure that has held the Iranian government together for more than 40 years. Not just the weapons, not just the factories, the entire apparatus of control. This is a comprehensive, multi-layered campaign targeting every dimension of Iranian power simultaneously: existing weapons, production infrastructure, the Air Force, the missile factories, nuclear sites, command and control networks, and now the individuals personally responsible for atrocities against their own people. Every layer, every tier. And through all of it, the Iranian government's response has been to quietly call Moscow and ask Putin to find a way to make it stop. Where this ends, what any final agreement looks like, and what Iran becomes on the other side of this are questions no one can fully answer right now. But based on everything we have walked through today, one thing is not in question. The Iran that exists after this, if the current regime survives at all, will be fundamentally, permanently, and irreversibly different from what it was before the first B-2 crossed into Iranian airspace. Before I wrap up, those two questions I put to you, I genuinely want your answers in the comments. Were you surprised by the speed and totality of what the U.S. military has accomplished? And do you think a full nuclear deal, one that includes the centrifuges, not just the stockpile, would actually be enough to end this? Get in there and tell me what you think. And if this breakdown gave you something real to think about, if it helped you make sense of a story the mainstream coverage is not telling fully, consider subscribing to Jonathan Blake. Hit that button and you will never miss a breakdown like this one. Every subscription tells the algorithm this content deserves to be seen, and that is how this channel keeps reaching people who want straight, serious analysis of the world's biggest stories. I will see you in the next one.